Well, so a lot of the luxury beliefs idea was born out of, my readings of Thorstein Veblen. He wrote this book. He was a sociologist and economist around the turn of the 20th century. He wrote The Theory of the Leisure Class in 1899. And in that book, he describes how the elites of his day would exhibit their status with material possessions. So, delicate and expensive clothing, pocket watches, monocles, attending lavish and expensive ballroom events. And today people still do that. But my claim is that material possessions are a noisier signal of one's status. So 100 years ago, just by looking at how someone was dressed, you could immediately tell who was rich and who was poor. Whereas today, because we've generally become a more wealthy society and because, it's just harder to tell just at first glance how much money someone has the way that you could in the past. Now, people express their status through luxury beliefs, that luxury beliefs have to a large extent replaced luxury goods. These are expressions of what the sociologist Pierre Bourdieu called cultural capital, where you spend your wealth to attend certain kinds of expensive schools and universities. You absorb the mannerisms and vocabulary and habits and opinions and fashionable views of the elite. That's how you sort of enculturate yourself into it. And it's also how you sort of stand apart from the masses. So if the conventional view is it's good to have law enforcement. Well, if you want to indicate that you're not a member of the unwashed masses, you say, actually, we should abolish police and reimagine how law enforcement works and, hire violence interrupters and, all these other sort of strange newfangled ideas. Policing, that's so backwards and antiquated. This is like a way to signal one's position in society. Yeah.
And obviously a view like that, defund the police, presents itself as being caring, speaking on behalf of, particularly, racial minorities who might have been harmed by the police, but it sort of doesn't see the other side of it, where actually crime probably is, for people growing up in poor areas, is probably a bigger problem than police brutality.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I cite survey data that throughout 2020 and 2021, when representative samples of Americans were asked, should we defund the police? It was the highest income Americans who were the most supportive of defunding the police. The lowest income Americans were the least supportive. And then when you just look at Democrats, so this is not a political issue. If you just look at Democrats, white Democrats were the most enthusiastic about defunding the police, and Black and Hispanic Democrats were the least supportive. And yet, a lot of prestige media and cultural elites, they will appoint sort of members of these communities who they themselves often went to elite universities and claim to speak on behalf of these oppressed groups. And so we spend a lot of time listening to these activists, but very few of us will actually go into those communities and try to listen and look at the survey data. What do people actually want? Crime increased, violent crime. The primary victims, the violent crime increase. The majority of the victims were poor, marginalized people.
This is post George Floyd after the defunding the police experiments.
Violent crime skyrocketed, homicides increased across the board, but most of the victims were poor, marginalized, ethnic minorities, and we're just kind of moving right along as if that had never happened.